Welcome back to The Full View. Now, a headline was splashed across South Africa today suggesting the opposition Democratic Alliance is at war with itself. The Sunday Times reported that at least 7 prominent DA figures face disciplinary charges or are under investigation in what insiders say is a battle for control of the party. And a prominent member of the party, DA MP Phumzile van Dam, said on social media today that she had only heard about the charges against her in the press. Well, the DA has been holding its 2-day policy conference this weekend. To discuss, we're joined by political analyst Professor Somadoda Fikeni. Prof, thank you for being with us. Would you agree, firstly, that the DA has a problem since charges were brought against Patricia de Lille and the party didn't fully convince the public there about what she had done wrong? Whenever charges are brought, there is this claim or a suspicion that it could be part of politics rather than about clean governance.
Without any doubt, DA is in a process of tearing itself apart, but some are convinced that it is in a process of revival. If you look at the pattern of these challenges for the leaders who happen to be black in the main, who have fallen out of the DA, all of them having the same narrative, it makes it very difficult to be convinced that each case should be considered on its merit, especially when there is a narrative. And also the return of Helen Zille, even after she was reprimanded for what was considered to be racist tweets, into heading the party. And the fact that the party has adopted what essentially she penned as a policy document when she was at the Institute of Race Relations, all those are an indication of a DA that is shifting into a more conservative mode, and a DA that has abandoned its ambition of broadening its constituencies, especially targeting the black majority.
Well, the report suggests that most of these figures are black people who are supporters of the former leader Mmusi Maimane and not the interim leader John Steenhuisen. But let's just bring up the tweet of Phumzile van Dam, because she's very angered. But I'd like to ask you, will this lead to claims again that the DA is not friendly to black members? Because she herself was outraged, but she was asked on social media today if the DA is racist, and she said no, she wouldn't stay if it was. It's much more complicated than that. Your take?
Well, I do think that when you have leaders internally like Phumzile van Dam making such damning testimonies, and those who are leaving the party, as well as Mbalintuli, who has called for an open debate which could have actually helped to air some of these things openly, and that in itself seemingly is not receiving favor from some of the establishment. And now the complaint that even the elective conference being held online might actually tilt against those who may not have all the infrastructure for internet. All those things are an indication of some marginalization and systemic rooting out of those voices that might be vocal and trying to literally remind the DA of the journey it has taken.
Yeah. All right, well, we'll see how this plays out with Phumzile van Dam. She says she's not going anywhere. She will stay and fight. Prof, this is a policy conference, and the policies have been overshadowed a bit. Let's just look at what came out on that front. The DA broke away from Mmusi Maimane, talking about redress, but no longer explicitly acknowledging that race is a proxy for disadvantage. So the DA talking about apartheid, but there's always this tension. My question to you is, do you think that a party that doesn't want to see colour at all, in a country where colour has shaped laws in the past and the majority of the population is black, does it have any chance at the polls in future?
Well, it will have a very difficult time, because not only are these leaders leaving, they are regrouping to contest the same constituency. And some of them may even contest the heritage of DA in terms of being genuine as liberals, as DA might be seen as drifting towards a neoconservative position. And also the other problem here is that if the experience of people, as you correctly said, was group experience, just like women, you can't say we will treat case by case, not you as a collective experience. And everywhere else around the world, they acknowledge where there's been, Holocaust or slavery, that this is a group experience. Hence, policies target that. DA exceptionalism, I doubt it's going to work.
Yeah, let's look at this. The DA says, if you look at this document, it says it values diversity. Each individual is unique and not representative of a race or gender, not an envoy of a race or gender. Thus, diversity is not demographic representativity. How else do you define diversity if you don't say we can categorize people in any way?
Well, it is very difficult because now you're going to be dealing with individual merits. That's where liberalism has always struggled with, because it individualizes and never recognizes the group collective experience. But the irony here is that the very same Helen Zille was complaining about the marginalization of whites, yet she had said race no longer matters. Why was she not saying, I'm looking at each individual case rather than a group experience? The problem here is that when you're dealing with a hegemonic system, once the group is dominant, it tends to nullify any group experience which may be counter-hegemonic and begin to say we will deal with case by case because it is resting in power and it doesn't want that power to be shaken or changed in any form.
You're right. I think she's also spoken about minorities, minority rights. Classic liberalism. Helen Zille is the champion of that. It sounds like you believe that could destroy this party.
In fact, to me, I go further to say, having lived in some of the countries where you had the Democratic Party, which is often classified as liberal in the US, and the Republicans, which are conservative, if you took the issues DA has been fighting for one by one, DA in the US and across Europe would be classified as a conservative party rather than a liberal party. So even by the standards of classical liberalism, they have not lived up to that when you deal with the social issues, which other liberal parties drift more towards the social democratic, element. What you are seeing here is the extreme of libertarianism, which is beyond what your classical liberalism might be, and also elements of very conservative policies on issues of race.
In the meantime, and finally, black leaders like Phumzile Van Dam and Mbali Ntuli choose to stay. She says she wants that debate with John Steenhuisen. I would like to see that. Would you?
I would like to see that. Remember that DA has always called for the presidential debates whenever there were elections. And when other parties were refusing, they said this is how democracy works. You need to have transparency. People need to know who is standing where. All of a sudden, that same principle now, when applied to them internally, it is no longer something acceptable. The same way they were saying with the ANC, you can't vote for the no confidence vote on President Jacob Zuma as a party. Use your conscience. When their members started using conscience, some of them were punished for doing exactly that, standing apart from the party. So there is no consistency in principle. That is the problem. Principle is used instrumentally rather than being intrinsic.
Yeah, you're right. Throwing stones can get you into trouble. Thank you very much for that analysis, political analyst Professor Somadoda Fikeni. Now, chairperson of the Standing Committee on